Hi, and welcome to this video about what do managers do for core management concepts. So first of all, we're interested in who it is that does management. And there are two distinct ways of conceptualizing what management is, which will slightly change the answer. One is that we see management as a universal human activity. And by that, we mean management is something that everyone does in their life, whether you're planning a holiday, organising a night out with friends, organising your finances, sorting out how you're going to pay your mortgage, whatever it might be. We could put management into many of those sentences. So in our own time, we do financial management, we do events planning and management, we do holiday and social time management, and so forth. So management becomes a universal human activity. We can see it in that way as something that everybody does. We can also see management as a distinct role. So by that, we mean that management is something that some people do for their job. It's a distinct thing that we are required to do in some cases to earn a living, or to run a community group, or to perform an important role in an organisation. So here management is a distinct role, and it might often be in someone's job title in these cases. So there might be a sales manager or sales director. They might be a HR manager, an IT manager, so forth and so forth. So these are people who, as part of their job, as part of their paid work, do management. And so we can see management as an activity or a distinct role that some people do that separates them from other people. Now we're going to stick for the rest of this little mini video on the topic of what it is that managers do and look at some different perspectives on that question. The first answer to that question of what do managers do, we can look to Peter Drucker. So Peter Drucker was a leading management theorist for many decades, and this work in 1974 is fairly typical of the type of thing that he did. And he said in this piece of work that there are 5 major areas that managers do, or 5 task types that managers undertake. The first is setting objectives, and that is in terms of working out what needs to happen in the future, and then setting targets for themselves, for others, for teams and so forth to help them get there. Secondly, he said that managers organise, so they turn plans into reality by deciding how to allocate time and effort. So whenever we talk about organising things, we tend to be talking about deciding what to spend time on and how much effort to put into something. We're getting organised. Thirdly, they motivate and communicate. So we might now see this as 2 very different things, but Drucker groups them together because they were seen as sort of skills of leading people almost. So encouraging people to commit to a course of action, and also exchanging information with people and encouraging them to exchange information with one another to help create a mutual understanding of a topic in question. Fourthly, Drucker talks about developing people, including him or herself, so including the leader or the manager. And he saw this as having 2 main elements. Firstly, identifying skills and knowledge gaps. So what skills and knowledge are needed for someone to undertake the role that they are paid to undertake, and how can you plug those gaps with learning and development. And then 5th and finally, measuring. So Drucker thought that managers measured, or needed to measure, with checking progress against plans and taking corrective actions where necessary. So in other words, a kind of performance measurement element, which we will look at in a great deal of detail in the final topic of core management concepts. Now, what we can say in a positive light about Drucker's research is that all of these elements, whether we see it as 5 elements or 6, are still common features of what managers do today. However, we could ask the question, are they just common features of what we believe managers should do? So does managers' work really look like this? Or is this in an ideal world? And do they actually spend time doing a range of other tasks or working in a different way? We can't be conclusive in terms of whether Drucker was onto something with this or not. It feels instinctively right that Drucker didn't directly conduct any research to be able to definitively say that this is what managers do. He just based it on what he felt he knew about management from his extensive years of experience as a consultant and researcher. So it overlooks agency theory as well, is one final criticism of it. You've looked at agency theory in previous units and probably in other modules too. But what we can say here is Drucker is just making the assumption that managers always act in the owner's best interests. So there's absolutely nothing here to suggest that there is tension and that managers might spend some of their time doing things that aren't helpful for the owner of the company. So let's go on to look at another theory then of what managers do, so we can start to compare and contrast them. And here we come onto the work of Henry Mintzberg, who is another leading theorist in this field. Mintzberg has a strong academic research background with a heavy emphasis on qualitative research, and the work that he did to understand what managers do is very much in this field. So he based his research on a very detailed study of managers. Not many managers, and that's a bit of a problem, but a handful of managers, and looking in detail at what it was they actually did on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So he found that if you analyse the work of real managers, their work was varied. He found that they did 10 task types split into 3 broader categories. The first was informational work. So that's around spreading information, acting as a spokesperson, and monitoring any information that is coming in. Secondly, interpersonal work. So that is where they are interacting with one another, with other people in their team and with others outside their team, acting as a figurehead, a leader and a liaison. And then thirdly, their role as a key decisional person, so making decisions, whether that's entrepreneurial decisions about what to invest in and how, or handling disturbances or conflict, which is something that, again, we'll be looking at later in core management concepts. Or maybe they're a resource allocator, choosing who gets what resources and which products and projects should be invested in comparison to others. And then finally, a negotiator, so helping to decisions to be made in a way that's going to work for everybody. In addition, Mintzberg also found through his study that managers' work was very fragmented. They found it hard to concentrate on one task for a long period of time and instead jumped around from task to task as they were required due to problems or due to needs of their team. And they also found that managers' work was, in the same sense, ad hoc, because they're pulled onto doing things. They can't plan a long way in advance. They have to be quite responsive to the problems and challenges that face them. So the research is good because it's based on detailed studies of managers, and it's not about what they should do, but what they did do. So it's a nice description of managerial work in the 1970s. However, one problem is, again, it overlooks agency theory. So it doesn't look at the fact that managers might not always be acting in the best interests of the owners. And it also obviously can't deal with changes that have happened in the environment since the 1970s. So here are just some elements that managers will now have to deal with that don't neatly fit into any of the categories of Drucker or Mintzberg's research. The first and perhaps most prominent is the idea of engaging with social media and other internet vehicles, as well as dealing with information overload that comes about as a result of all these multiple sources of information we now have to deal with. There's also an increasing push for managers to be really good role models and to show the way about how we should do things, which wasn't so important in the 70s. And also supporting or safeguarding as well. They've become very important, recognising the role, because managers are in a position of power, the role that they play in making sure that others are okay. Also, influencing upwards has received a great deal of attention, and how to be a successful manager, you have to be good at influencing those managers who are more senior than you. And then finally, thinking about undertaking their own non-managerial work. So managers increasingly are expected to engage with work that is not to do with managing or overseeing, but is actually the day job of the company, as it were. So if they were working in insurance, they wouldn't just be managing other insurance clerks, they would have some insurance clients of their own as well. And some research that I've been doing on managers at the middle levels in the organisation really reinforces how stressful this can be for managers today with having to do this juggling work. So we look at one final area then, a much more up-to-date study of what managers do, which came about as a result of Google trying to understand what good management looked like in their own company. So obviously this research is based on Google, so we maybe won't be able to apply it to all companies, but it provides an excellent snapshot of the types of things that are seen to be important for management today. So we can see 8 different areas where Google said that a good Google manager does these things. So firstly, a good manager is a good coach. So they're good at coaching their people and helping them to develop. Secondly, they're good at empowering the team and don't micromanage. The notes there see the sidebar on how Google defines one key behaviour. You will find that in your reading for this module on the Garvin reading from 2003. Thirdly, they express interest and concern for team members' success and personal well-being. So they are involved, they have a stake in how the team members are doing. They're productive and results oriented, so they make sure that things happen. Note that word productive, that really talks to the fact that managers today are expected to do their own work as well as managing. They're good communicators who listen and share information. They help with career development. They have a clear vision and strategy for the team and have technical skills that help him or her advise the team. So lots more to do with leadership, lots more to do with setting direction and being really engaged with their people. So what you will find to be a very helpful exercise in preparing you for the exam and in understanding management better is to line up these three theories side by side. So that's Google and Mintzberg and Drucker, and comparing and contrasting what they each believe managers do. And that will really help to develop your understanding of what it is that managers do. Thanks so much for listening today, and look forward to seeing you in a future video. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.